Hi everyone, welcome to this talk today on psychology and law. I'm Grace, your today's speaker, a forensic psychologist from Enlight Mental Health Charity in Johor. So a bit of my background. I hold a Master in Criminological and Forensic Psychology from the University of Nottingham in UK. I also hold a graduate membership of the British Psychological Society. I've mainly worked with children with disabilities in Singapore, mainly on assessing their deputyship, school readiness, and doing some projects to support children with disabilities and their family members. Today we'll be covering on topic on what is mental health, the study and practice of law and mental health, legal challenges around mental health, and also a case study. I'll be talking on things in psychology in general and also in Malaysia. The topic may be slightly deep and may cause uncomfortableness. If it's too uncomfortable for you, it's up to you. You can stop the part of the video and continue on later part of the video as well. The cases that we'll be using today in this talk, here and there, all details are carefully adjusted to protect the confidentiality. This is also to tell you that if there's any similarity, it's purely coincident. So what is mental health? Mental health is the level of psychological well-being. According to WordNet I found online, the definition is, it is the state of someone who is functioning at a satisfactory level of emotion and behavioral adjustment. Any diagnosis of mental health issue is based on the criteria listed in DSM-5 or ICD. DSM-5 is Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5th edition. This is mainly used in UK. And ICD is International Classification of Disease, mainly used in America. Both are accepted. It mainly identifies issues that has affected a person's daily function. Basically, if someone cannot function anymore due to the mental health, then we will say that it's a mental health issue. Research in mental health or psychology focus on prevention and also intervention. And I will be talking about these two topics later on. Research on preventing mental health issues try to identify high-risk factors and also to develop appropriate preventative measures to reduce risk. The two main risk factors that we have classified is gene and also environment. Gene is gene. Environment include trauma, abuse, peer influence, and etc. So we'll try to support individuals with such a risk factors to reduce their risk to develop mental health issue. Another area of research in mental health and psychology is intervention. We try to develop therapies, rehabilitation programs, and community support programs to help people with mental health issues. The most popular therapy nowadays is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT. You may have heard it before. Other than that is cognitive analytical therapy, psychodynamic therapy, art therapy, play and sound therapy, hypnosis, and etc. Other than therapy, there are also rehabilitation programs in prison in countries outside of Malaysia like UK and America. Each rehabilitation programs is designed to suit different offenders. Like for example, arson offenders, sex offenders, substance abuse offenders, they all have their own programs because they have their own issues to target on. And we have programs for offenders with learning disabilities as well. Because most of the rehabilitation programs in prison are group-based, and so people with learning disabilities may have difficulties in understanding and following instructions. So they may be left out in normal rehabilitation programs, and so we have specific programs for them as well. We have also community support. So basically this is to help people with mental health issues to integrate back to the society, to help them to live a functional life. So there's this rule called no one rule fits all, because all cases are unique in psychology and no one is the same. So there's no 100% answer or rules and regulation that fits all. So a lot of research are needed in psychology to test our hypothesis and retesting to identify the validity and reliability of a theory. And all statements and arguments of a psychologist should be linked to a peer-reviewed paper. This is so that we can have a good evidence to support our arguments. Next, I will be talking on the study and practice of law and mental health in Malaysia and in other countries as well. So in Malaysia, there is this act called Mental Health Act 2001. Basically, this is to control people being treated in mental health hospitals. So admission to mental health hospitals under this act can be by court or by a registered medical practitioner, which is a psychiatrist, or voluntarily. So involuntary patient may be discharged by medical director in the mental health hospital when they don't need any further treatment. Any staff or member of the mental health hospital cannot ill-treat patients as well. If they do, they will be liable to fine or imprisonment. And under this act, patients' confidentiality is protected as well. Next, I will be talking about insanity law in Malaysia under Section 84 of the Penal Code in Law of Malaysia. Basically, under this law, nothing is an offence if the accused was insane at the time the crime was committed, and the condition has impaired the accused that they did not know the nature of the act or what they do is wrong. And so it depends on the offender's motive and their capacity of mind to understand the consequences of the event, whether they can control themselves. It is up to the accused to prove himself as being insane. And it's up to the court to determine whether the person is insane or not. The next practice of law and mental health is mental capacity. Basically, psychologists help to determine a person's cognitive ability. And this is mainly done in UK, US, and Singapore, but not in Malaysia yet. So we help to determine a suspect's competency to stand trial, mainly for people with disabilities like ASD, ADHD, learning disability, and etc., so that we can provide proper support for them and they will not be discriminated by the system. The next is we help to determine an offender's probability to benefit from rehabilitation programs. This is very limited in Singapore yet because the rehabilitation programs in Singapore is very limited as well. We help to determine parents' ability to take care of their children as well, because some parents may be experiencing too much stress or emotional stress, and we help them to see how we can support them, how they can adjust to it, and also how both of them can live a functional life. Next, we'll be talking about legal challenges in mental health. I'll be talking about general staff and then staff in Malaysia itself. Research in forensic psychology has found that eyewitness memory can be an issue as well. Stress can affect recollection of memory. Too little or too much of stress can affect how much we remember, and there's an optimum level of stress where we remember the best. And there's this theory called the reconstructive memory. Basically, the memory is an active process which is encoded according to how we construct them, and it can be changed as time goes by. For example, if you see a man and a woman arguing in a bar, and for you, men should be gentlemen and they should not be arguing with a woman. And so you may be thinking that the man is fierce and being unreasonable. And as time goes by, or as you describe them further and further, you may think that the man is very fierce to the woman, and it can grow. You can even think that the man is very aggressive to the woman, and then your memory end up mixing up, saying that the man actually hit the woman. Research shows that this may happen to memory as well. And there's this weapon focus effect, whereby our memory is focused on the weapon itself and not any other things in our surrounding. This is for survival instinct. And this is particularly problematic for gang fight or street robbery even, whereby the robber's description may be inaccurate due to this effect. Another issue with eyewitness memory is leading questions, whereby memory recall can be affected by how the questions is phrased. For example, in Loftus and Palmer's experiment in 1974, they shown participants of two groups the same set of video of a car accident. In Group A, they asked, are their glasses shattered when the car crashed? And Group B, they asked, are their glasses shattered when the car smashed? And Group B has significantly more people recall that there are glasses shattered in the scene compared to Group A, while in fact, there are no glasses shattered in the scene at all. And so this shows that interrogators can have misleading questions that affect eyewitness memory recollection as well. Another legal challenges that mental health field have found is forced confession. It may be quite bizarre for you when you first heard it. It's quite bizarre for me. how can a person falsely confess to something that they didn't do? And research shows that they actually do falsely confess, and due to several reasons that I will highlight to you later on, and we'll try to help you to understand better. Firstly is investigators' misclassification error, mainly due to misinterpretation of body language. Investigator, police, detectives around the world has been going through a lot of training. They think that they are going through training to distinguish deceptive and truthful suspects. But actually research shows that this type of training only helps with their interrogation skills, but not in increased accuracy to detect truth and lie. And in fact, body language research is very immature currently. It's quite inaccurate currently as well. Research shows that you need a lot of training and experience to actually be slightly more accurate, and there's a lot of research and understanding behind it that is still going on yet. And so such a training doesn't really help you to understand body language just like that. Investigator misclassification error can actually lead to the next error, which is coercion error. Coercion is to persuade someone to do something by force. If a police or investigator misclassified a suspect to be their real criminal, they may use different techniques to get any confession from them. This error can be caused by one technique or the accumulative techniques of what the police use. Techniques like torturing, standing up all day long, cannot sleep, brutal languages even, and etc. can cause the suspect to think that they have no choice but to comply to the investigator's demand. So they may falsely confess. And research shows that their technique and such techniques can actually lead to false confession. Another factor that can increase false confession rate is vulnerability of suspects. Vulnerable suspects like people who are highly suggestible or compliant, or people with disabilities, or people with mental health issues are more prone to say yes or falsely confess to the investigator. The next and last error that I will talk about is contamination error. This is something to do with post-admission process, and it is to reinforce false confession instead of eliciting a false confession. So in a police report, they may try to elicit a persuasive account of the motives of the suspect, making it difficult for others to actually realize that this is a false confession. Here, I've included a short video interview of people who falsely confess. This is a case study in America, and it was found that the person that was accused was actually not the criminal itself.
On the evening of July the 20th, 1996, the body of a 14-year-old girl was found 5 miles from her home on the banks of the Mississippi River. She was partly naked, and she had a red extension lead round her neck. Damon Thibodeau, the victim's cousin, who'd been staying with her family in New Orleans, was taken in for questioning. He was not arrested, but was subjected to an overnight interrogation during which he was denied sleep. After over 8 hours of questioning, and despite being innocent, Damon confessed to raping and murdering his cousin. This confession was factually inconsistent with the actual crime in many ways. He described different electrical cord, said the injuries to her head and face were caused by his hands, not a heavy object, and forensic examiners could find no trace of any sexual assault or rape. Despite this, he was quickly arrested, convicted, and sentenced to death in the notorious Angola prison in Louisiana. After 15 years of work by his lawyers, a DNA test on some blood left behind by the murderer proved that Damon was innocent. He was exonerated on the 28th of September 2012. He now lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Crystal's mother noticed that she had gone missing, and she started to worry. We searched neighborhoods, the park where she played softball at, her friends. There was a Coast Guard helicopter there, as well as the police, family, friends. I was looking for her for, 36 hours? I had just laid down to go to sleep when the detectives knocked on my door, said they wanted to ask me some questions about Crystal. At first, I thought it was just a routine thing. Her body was found as I was being questioned. They put you in a room and, you know, you're in a chair with a desk. They're allowed to manipulate you, threaten you, pretty much do whatever it takes to secure a confession from you. No one walks into an interrogation room wanting to confess to something they didn't do. I was told I failed the polygraph. My witnesses weren't vouching for me. They explained in detail how someone's executed. After having no sleep for 36 hours and getting drug in for a 9-hour interrogation like that, I was not willing to go any longer. You know, I was like, well, they're never gonna let me out of here until I give them what they want, so I gave them what they wanted. I'm sitting in the cell and I'm hoping that, you know, after the investigation, it's gonna show I didn't do it. But, you know, they were trying to close the case and they got tunnel vision and I was just in the crosshairs. They walked into the courtroom and made it sound like I just walked into this interrogation room and spilled my guts. The jury heard the confession and that was it. So now I have all this time. If I had been strong enough and survived the interrogation without giving this false confession, I wouldn't be here. Thoughts like that were running through my head every day for 15 years. Every day. That's what I would think about. I was seriously contemplating dropping my appeals and walking to the table. Because I thought, well, they're gonna kill me anyway, so just do it now and get it done. But my lawyer walked in there and she said, look, you didn't do it. I know you didn't do it. Give me a chance. They said, well, we've pulled stuff from the evidence locker and we're having this tested for DNA and it's showing that you didn't do it. I've been out for 7 months, almost 8 months, you know, and it's not easy trying to put your life back together after going through something like this and to just get out and get thrown back into the pond, so to speak. You know, it's daunting at times. I used to be one of those people who believed that someone would never confess to something they didn't do. And society as a whole believes that. But yet here I am, here I sit. You know, there's a false confession out there that I gave for a murder that someone else committed. Until you go through it, you just won't know. You know, how much of an interrogation can you take? You know, everyone has a point. And when you break, you'll tell them whatever they want to hear. And I would have. I'd have told them anything they wanted me to tell them.
After watching the video, I hope that you can understand how this can be an issue to our criminal justice system. Next, I will talk about issue in Malaysia. The first is misconception. Misconception on how mental health can be involved in law. Expert witnesses are often thought as a way for the offender to escape punishment. This is mainly due to our nation approach, which is towards getting justice done instead of rehabilitation. And rehabilitation facilities in Malaysia is very limited. This actually can lead to high risk of reoffending because a lot of offenders, their issue can be resolved by therapy. And if it's not resolved and they come out from the prison or any punishment, they will re-offend again. And actually a lot of risk of reoffending can actually be resolved by therapy. Another issue in Malaysia is that there is no law to enforce this profession. There is Counsellor Act for counsellor, there is Mental Health Act for psychiatrist, there is no psychologist specific act. So anyone can claim to be a psychologist without such an enforcement, and they can practice anything they want without any control of the law. Of course, they cannot break any law in the current system. And I know a few people actually did this in KL. They don't have psychology related degree, but they claim that they are a psychologist and is treating people. Whereas in other country like UK, psychologist is a very professional title and is protected, like doctors, pharmacists. Psychologists have to register with BPS, which is British Psychological Society, and also the Healthcare Profession Council, which is HCPC in UK. Actually in Singapore, it's very similar to Malaysia. There's no act or law to protect psychologist title, but there are awareness that psychologist is a professional title. So they want you to be registered, or they want you to be able to meet the criteria of Singapore Psychological Society. And I hope that Malaysia will move forward in this awareness as well. Next, I will talk about issue with psychological practices in Malaysia. There is no law to control practice of psychologists like I've said before. So some psychologists are actually selling vitamins and other products like pillows at a very high price and say that this will help the clients with their sleep, their mood, their situation, and etc. And it's up to the client to believe it or not. And even after that, when they realize it's a scam or it doesn't help them at all, they cannot report to any law enforcement because there's no law to control such practices. Next is people in Malaysia are not aware of the distinction between psychiatrist, psychologist, and counsellor. Although these three are overlapping in services, but they are three different occupations. For example, here is psychiatrists are diagnosing patients without proper assessment. Most assessments are done by psychologists, and most psychiatrists are not trained in assessment. For example, some mental health issues like autism spectrum disorder, ASD, this need to be assessed using a set of assessment as required. And most psychiatrists does not have this skill, and they cannot diagnose people with ASD without that assessment. The last issue that I'll talk about is that there's no demand, sadly. There's no psychological report demand in area that is actually needed. For example, school readiness test. This is mainly for children with disability. We test their cognitive and behavioral ability and to see which school suits them best. We also test their school to work readiness. This is mainly for children with disability as well, to suggest a suitable job position for them. We also have mental capacity assessment on deputyship, child custody cases, and child fostering program, and etc. We also do expert witnesses assessment. Like what I've said just now, psychiatrists cannot do assessment, so when they do court report, they may need cognitive and behavioral assessment from the psychologist, and so they will have to work hand in hand with the psychologist to come up with a report. This is done in Singapore, but not in Malaysia yet. And next, we have come to the case study section, which what I think is the most interesting part in this talk. So we'll be talking about Mr. M, who is charged with murder. And bear in mind, stories are all fictional and facts are adjusted based on real cases. And if there's any similarity, it is purely coincident. So on that day of incident, our accused, Mr. M, was driving one of his sons to work. He suddenly changed his direction and drove against the flow of the traffic. His car crashed into a few vehicles and finally stopped. One was killed on the spot and several was severely injured. He was charged with culpable homicide with a sentence of life imprisonment or a term of 20 years. So here's the background and history of Mr. M. He's a businessman of a small enterprise and a regular churchgoer. He had 3 children who are all working adults with their own family, and he was living with one of them. His company faced financial difficulties few months before the incident, and he was diagnosed with depression and was taking related medicines for quite a while. He stopped the medicines abruptly when he felt he was okay. Here I want to highlight that a lot of psychotic medicines cannot be stopped just like that because it deals with our hormones. So if you have friends who is taking such medicines, please advise them not to stop suddenly and seek advice from their doctor or psychiatrist to stop gradually. Clinical interviews and observations done by psychologists and psychiatrists reported that Mr. M stated that he was instructed and controlled by God to change the direction of his driving. His body is not under his own control at the time of incident, although he knows that he is wrong. His staff also mentioned that he shared bizarre idea with her before the incident. His family members and friends confirmed that he has significant change in behaviors, such as not attending church meetings, claiming that he is God or has direct contact with God, or that there is something big happening soon. His son's report of the incident was same as Mr. M report. For example, the son said that he heard Mr. M arguing with someone he called God at the time of incident. So the psychologist also did a few assessments on him. He did assessment on personality, cognitive test, stress level test, and etc. Conclusion from assessment and evaluations stated that he showed symptoms of delusion and hallucination around the period of incident, before and after. He is experiencing significant level of stress due to the financial issue from his company. He also met the criteria for both DSM and ICD for schizophrenia. He has depressive personality disorder. He also passed the test of malingering memory, TOM, which is an assessment to test whether a person is genuine or not. Passing the test means that he is genuine. After all the evaluations, interviews, and assessment done by the psychologist, he concluded that Mr. M have schizophrenia, and his mental health disorder have significantly affected his behavior at the time of incident. The psychologist also recommended the judge leniency in judgment with ongoing medicines treatment and psychotherapy, because sending him to lifetime imprisonment would not help resolve his issue. And besides, medicines have actually shown improvement in him, so why not continue, and with psychotherapy as well. The judge agreed with the psychologist, and Mr. M was given a shorter jail sentence with mandatory treatment as recommended by the psychologist. I hope that the cases and topic that I've covered today would help you better understand relationship between law and mental health in Malaysia and also in a wider context. Just to help you better understand what people with mental health illness feels like, I've included a video simulation of paranoid schizophrenia. If it's too uncomfortable for you, you may skip this part of the talk and continue on to the next section.
You are about to experience a brief simulation of a psychotic episode in a patient with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia can provide powerful experiences, especially for those undiagnosed or not being treated effectively enough. The symptoms you will experience represent a compilation of a range of sensory occurrences, as reported by actual patients. These occurrences include sights, sounds, as well as wind and even scents. If you have any discomfort during the experience, please signal a facilitator.
Worthless.
He's waking up now.
Oh, the phone woke him up. don't answer.
They'll know who you are.
You're a waste of space.
Why are you so stupid?
A waste of our time.
Stupid. So stupid. Worthless. We hate you.
He's gonna pick up the phone.
They'll know if you lie.
Rain! It's
Something
rain.
wrong. Weather.
Now to get pizza.
Poison.
Coming for you. Pizza.
He's hanging up.
Do you hear me?
Don't eat.
Out to get you.
Poison.
They know about you.
Cameras
Poison.
were rolling when the armed gunmen entered the convenience store on 14th Street. The suspects were described as medium in stature with a slightly youthful demeanor. Anyone with information about this incident is urged to contact
They know.
authorities.
They know about you.
And in other news, officials have closed the northbound
Time for
lane
meds.
Don't do
Boulevard
that.
due to a water main break. Repair crews are on the scene. Now here's a story out of Chicago from last night. Two men posing as maintenance workers nearly made it out of the Quick Bite convenience store with the store's ATM machine.
Make a
The
list.
suspects
Make
pulled
a
up in
longer
van,
list.
entered the store, asked the
You
customers
are
to not use the
ungrateful.
machine because of
You're a
reported
waste of
problems.
space.
They
A
told
waste
the
of our
clerk that they were
time.
going to take the machine back to their
Getting
shop for
coffee
repair.
now.
Don't drink it.
Sensing something
Stupid.
suspicious,
So
the clerk
stupid.
That
called
smells
local
awful.
authorities.
Don't drink that coffee.
When the clerk told the men he had called police, the pair took off and left the machine.
Why are
in the
you so
parking lot.
worthless?
So Sky, tell us how this weekend's weather is
Weather.
shaping out.
Something wrong.
You know what, Chuck? There's just no stopping the weekend weather. You hear that, worthless? Weather's coming to get
Something wrong. Weather.
And what are you going to do about it, huh?
Something wrong.
You have to stop it.
You're just going to sit around with your stupid mouth open and do nothing?
You have to stop it. It's the weather. It's here for us.
Now he has to answer the door.
It's here for us. Do something. Stay in. Stay away from the
No,
door.
stop the weather. Protect us.
You didn't order anything.
No, don't answer.
You're stupid to open that door.
He has to open the door now.
Here you go.
Don't do it.
You'll be in trouble.
Poison.
This is for you.
This is for you.
He's working with them. He's part of the plot.
This is for you.
Shut the door. Shut it.
Don't eat it. Poison.
You're stupid to open
I
it.
hate you. We
Here are
hate
some
you.
items on today's activities calendar. And you need some activities, especially when you're lazy and you sleep too much. Stop staring at me. I know what you're thinking.
He knows.
You can stop
They're
it.
coming for you. You know that.
Part of the plot.
Use your mind.
Because you're so ungrateful.
Don't eat it. Poison.
No, don't open
He
it.
has to open the
This
box.
is entirely your fault.
Don't eat it.
Don't eat it. Poison. Poison.
They're here, and it's all your fault.
Oh,
No.
they know it's you.
You're in
Don't
control.
open the
You
door.
hear that?
No, don't open it.
Don't open it.
They're here, and it's all your fault.
You did it.
You should have used your mind to stop it.
Stop it. You have to take control.
Stop the door.
Hey! You alright in here? I called you. Why didn't you answer? I was like screaming, "It's Lorraine! It's Lorraine!" into the phone at the top of my lungs.
What were you watching? Do you even remember?
Did the pizza Oh! What happened here? Did you forget to take your medicine this morning? Well, you know it's not good to miss a dose. Well, it's not too late to take it now. Let's get back on track. And why are you standing here in the dark? It's a beautiful day outside. Let some sunlight in. You need to get outside and enjoy it.
This experience is intended to heighten your awareness of the conditions affecting breakthrough symptoms in patients with schizophrenia, who may be in need of efficacious treatments. It is not meant to suggest that all of the symptoms depicted here are displayed by all schizophrenics. There is no typical case of schizophrenia.
Congratulations in finishing the video simulation. Isn't it scary to hear and feel and see things like that? It is even scarier if the person doesn't know that he has schizophrenia, and it's the brain that is tricking him to believe and see things that isn't there. There are a lot of other different videos as well in YouTube. You just type the disorder that you are interested in with a simulation word behind it, and hopefully you can find the simulation of the disorder that you wanted. And after all the video, I hope that you will be more understanding and compassionate towards people you come in contact with who have mental health illness. Here are additional resources in case if you are interested to find out more. I've included some questions for you to reflect on and discuss with your friends and lecturer. Hope you learn a lot from all this. Last but not least, thank you for tuning in to my talk. You can contact me through Enlight Mental Health Facebook page. And that's all from me.